silent meditation and the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Second.
Okay, and I'll pass it back to you, Mayor, for the roll call.
Roll call. Member Webb. Present. Member Fruitstone.
Present.
Oh Lord, you okay? Oh, Member Fruitstone. Vice Chair McLean
Present.
and Chairperson Carpenter.
Present.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Carpenter. You do have a quorum. We also have, for the record, we do have Hugh Gladwin, who I'll bring over right now, who acts as a consultant, and the liaison is here also, Mayor Nickerson.
I believe that Colin Brown is also going to be coming in.
Great.
And yes, there is Mr. Brown as a consultant.
Okay, wonderful. Great. Well, let's jump into approval of the agenda. Any changes to today's agenda? No? Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve today's agenda.
In a second?
Second.
Oh, okay, all those in favor of approval say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Hearing none, agenda is approved. Approval of the minutes from last meeting. Any changes?
No, but I just want to confirm that we're approving minutes for December 15th.
Yeah, we do have, so, well, first of all, we haven't had a meeting in a while, but we've had meetings since then, but we're behind in minutes approvals. Because remember, there were a couple meetings where there would be 2 minutes to approve, and I didn't get it out to you guys in time for you guys to be able to read through both of those minutes. So we kept tabling like 2 minutes, like it was 2 different minutes we kept tabling. We did that twice. So it was 4 different sets of minutes. So that's from December. Before next meeting, what I'll try to do is get you guys the next 2. So we're like about 4 or 5 behind.
Okay, so you're just giving us one at a time?
Yeah, well, but because I didn't get to you guys in time for you guys to read like 3, you know what I mean? So
okay,
that's the reason why I only gave you guys 1 this time.
Okay, so we're just approving December 15th, 2021.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I motion that we approve and I have read them, that we approve the minutes for December 15th, 2021.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Hearing none.
I really don't want to talk.
That's okay. Why don't you just do a thumbs up? Don't worry about it. Yes, perfect. All right, minutes are approved. Back to the agenda. Acknowledgement of visitors and special presentations. Mayor Nickerson?
We have none, Madam Chair. We can move right to the good and welfare.
Good and welfare, okay. And I know we have Mr. Brown on and Mr. Gladwin. Do you guys have anything for good and welfare? No, okay. And then I also see Katkin Flowers. Just give her an opportunity to speak in good and welfare. No, okay. Oh,
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
hello?
Go ahead, just say your name and address for the record, and you can go ahead and the floor is yours.
Oh, sure. Katkin Flowers at 359 Academy Street, South Orange, New Jersey, 07079. And I am Hugh Gladwin's niece, and I'm going to be assisting with the affairs that he's brought up before about the project at his property.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
and I'm sorry, let me jump in. I wasn't able to unmute myself, but Katkin is already going to be working with Colin and me, and particularly with Colin on the park plan. And she's been down here meeting with him, and is going to be, I think, a great addition to what's happening.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Gladwin, I know that we have an agenda item for the weather page. Because the park update, do you want to go ahead and do that right now since it's not a listed agenda item?
Oh, you mean
With your property?
Oh, no, we'll be reporting on that later. We're
Okay.
kind of in a big state and flux, and my wife Mary and I are actually moving in a week, so it's going to shift to residing in one place, and the park will be my day job after a week from now. So I'll be here every day, but it's a different status. So.
Well, do you want to? You're saying push it to later in this meeting or later?
No. Let's next meeting or after that. So yeah.
Gotcha. Understood. Okay, great. So we will close good and welfare then, and move on to first agenda item: Miami-Dade County status, TMDL versus RAP nutrient cap.
Madam Chair, I put this on. I know that you have some new information and some recent information about Miami-Dade County, what they had to go through, what they kind of missed out on, due to preparation and what the future has to look for, what the future has to entail going forward when it comes to the RAP. I didn't know if you wanted to give a quick update on what did happen with Miami-Dade County, the reasonable assurance plan, compared to the TMDL, and kind of like what that all means. I think, a good place.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I didn't know. I'm happy to do that. I didn't know if you had heard anything else from the county, but I can give a quick overview. So the county right now is going through the process of creating a reasonable assurance plan. And I wanted to kind of explain to you guys what that is. So under the Clean Water Act, the state of Florida is required to go through cycles and assess all of the waters in the state of Florida, and mark those that are impaired by some form of pollution. Once they're on the impaired list, I'm oversimplifying it, but essentially once they're on the impaired list, there's the typical next step is for that water body to have a total maximum daily load created for it, which is the maximum amount of pollutants that can enter that water body without exceeding water quality standards. So if a water is currently impaired, that means it has too much pollutants entering the water body and it's exceeding water quality standards. What do we need to get it down to so that it would meet those standards? That process is pretty extensive and it requires, that process is pretty extensive and it requires looking at the watershed that drains into the water at issue and basically distributing the sources of those pollutants. And once you've distributed and found out where the various pollutants are coming from, then you can start targeting those sources. But you have to know where it's coming from in the first place in order to cut back or eliminate that source of pollution such that the water body can meet standards. That's the typical Clean Water Act process. If you do not want to go through the TMDL process, the Clean Water Act provides an alternative called a reasonable assurance plan, and that is RAP for short. So the county has a number of impaired waters that would be set up for this TMDL process, but it hasn't begun. And so the county is coming in and saying, you don't need to go through the TMDL process. We are going to put together a plan to reasonably assure you, a reasonable assurance plan that our waters can meet water quality standards through the projects that exist and the proposed projects that we're going to be implementing to cut back on pollution. The county is bringing this up for the first time because last year there was a pretty significant round of funding that went to the various counties in the state, and Miami-Dade County got none of them because we didn't have TMDLs or a RAP. So the county is trying to create a RAP by, I think, September or October of this year. And because it's a very heavy lift in a very short amount of time, they're not focusing on all of Biscayne Bay or all of Miami-Dade County. They're focusing on the northern area that has the most significant water pollution problems, namely the Little River area. They haven't come out with their exact scope of what the boundaries of the RAP are, but they have talked about the C7 and the C8 generally, so the Little River and Biscayne Canal. So they're in the process of doing that. It's a very short time frame, so it's great to have a RAP. I think one of the concerns that I have is that given how quickly they're turning this around, I don't know how they're going to be able to distribute, to do a full assessment of where all the nutrients are coming from in order to address the source control of that. One of the reasons that local municipalities prefer a RAP is that it's not the state coming in and telling them what they need to do in the case of a TMDL, but it's a plan that the local government puts together with communities, industry, stakeholders, residents to come together and then come back to the state and say, we've created our own plan, the way that we want to do it to get our pollution under control. And so the idea is that it's a collaborative effort with not only the government entities, but also the communities and the private businesses as well. So it's, again, it's a lot to do by September, but that's what the county is working on right now. It may be, they need to have it to the state by November, but I think they have to back it up a little bit to get them the first draft before that. And the deadline is so that they can get into the funding queue so that next year when this round of funding comes in, they have RAP in place that would allow them to access that extra funding. So that's the overview on that. Any questions or comments? Okay, so I would imagine, Hugh, I see your hand. I would imagine that the county should be reaching out to El Portal as soon as they have a scope of work. I know they're hiring an outside consultant to run the process. But I just wanted to flag that for you all. Hugh?
Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment about the Little River Conservancy plan. You know, we had our fundraising to raise money for a sensor. We raised about $6,000, and we've heard that there may possibly be additional monies, but we also decided that, you know, we need to do this slowly. So for about 3 months, I've been at our house measuring dissolved oxygen. And we have some other sensors that I need to calibrate, but, you know, basically we do have a check on dissolved oxygen, you know, right before the S27. So that's the big, you know, the big outcome variable that's problematic, and it's been low. But not zero. I mean, it's at the point where it's not very healthy for fish, and it's certainly going to not be good during the summer when it gets hot. But, you know, I think the main thing right now I've discovered is when you add more instruments to sort of monitor the whole process, you have to have comparative data. So I've been working to get it, but if this starts, it would be great because FIU actually has a sensor nearby on Northeast 2nd, but they're just so swamped with work, they don't keep up well with getting the data. So, you know, Adam and I in particular that are doing this, we're looking for anybody who can give us comparative data so we can start measuring other parameters and, you know, and then do better estimates. So anyway, so that's proceeding.
Great. Thank you. And thanks to the whole conservancy for doing that. Any other comments or questions on this agenda item? Okay, we'll move on to H2, El Portal status, ranking, stormwater compliance, MPDS. I think this is, I assume this is for me too, Mayor. Okay, so the Everglades Law Center has been working with Miami Waterkeeper for the last 8 or 9 months to look at stormwater compliance of the various municipalities in Miami-Dade County. And we put together and released a report card last year of all the permittees in Miami-Dade County that have to comply with stormwater permits, and released that. And I wanted to share with you all the findings, and you can access that either on Miami Waterkeeper's website or on Everglades Law Center's website. But the entire purpose of the report was to assess compliance with MS4 permits, not to look at water quality or the size of the municipality or anything like that. So what we did is that we made public records requests to all of the permittees, all the 35 permittees in Miami-Dade County, and looked at the information that was provided in those public records requests, namely at their annual report. So with a MS4 stormwater permits, municipal separate stormwater sewer system, MS4, I believe that's the acronym stands for. But with an MS4 permit, you have to report annually on how you're complying with the permit. And so we looked at the annual reports for all the municipalities and did two assessments. We looked at pure compliance levels, like, are you complying with the permit, yes or no? And then we also looked at qualitative compliance. So even though you may have checked a box for compliance, how well are you actually performing the particular task that the permit requires of you? So we got two different rankings for all 35 permittees, and El Portal for compliance got a 62%. So that's just, are you complying with the permit or not? And for qualitative scoring, El Portal received a 37%. So how well are you doing? So again, we ranked all 35, but I think that there's some really low-hanging fruit that we can work on to get these numbers up for compliance. One, and then the separate issue is how can we use our stormwater permit to improve water quality? Because stormwater is one of the most significant sources of pollution into our waterways. And the permit itself does not always fully address the pollution issue. It often focuses more on quantity of water rather than quality of water. So just without getting into all the specific details of the report, which Mayor Nickerson and I have a meeting to talk further about, there's some really low hanging fruit in ways that we can really easily improve. Let me pull up a couple of those things. So for example, the annual report requires certain attachments. We didn't submit some of those attachments, so you get docked for some points like that, but that's a really easy fix and an easy way to get further into compliance. We don't have a proactive inspection program to report or to inspect for illicit discharges. So that's an easier thing to implement. So things like that. I think our biggest issue is our maintenance and inspection schedule of our existing stormwater. We don't really know how much we're maintaining and inspecting things. And I think that's another area that's easy for us to improve. So again, this was at compliance, but I'd love to, this was looking at our compliance levels, but I'd love to look at in some of our subsequent meetings what we can do for nutrients and pollutants getting into our stormwater systems. And as a follow-up to that, something that I'd also like to suggest that we can kind of maybe put on the agenda for next time is it's called a SAMS, a Stormwater Asset Management System, that is a software created on the shelf that the village could implement that allows us to have a digital map of our whole stormwater system and flag specific maintenance schedules and keep track of your maintenance and illicit discharges, all the things that the permit requires, you could keep track of on the software, and it would allow residents to interplay with that as well. So if a resident reported that someone was dumping, oil into the stormwater drain, that could be flagged with this program. So I know that Mayor Nickerson, you had talked about us having a technology grant for funds previously, and I don't know if there's any money left in that pot, but I thought that this might be a good proposal for that grant, if that is still something that needs to be funded. So that's the very high level of that. I'm happy to answer any questions or comments. Mr. Brown?
I have a question for you. Is there any way that you think that this The next item on the agenda is the parks renovation. Is there any way that the parks can be renovated in a way that gives points to this stormwater?
Yes, I'm very glad you said that, and I'm glad that you're here because I put your name on the agenda for that item. So I'm very happy to hear you say that. A lot of the stuff, I mean, we have a really packed agenda today, so I don't want to walk through all of the different permit compliance, you know, that needs to be accomplished, but I'm happy to do that on the next meeting. But the short answer is yes. There are some things that this could help with, but the bigger things that I think that the parks could be used to assist with, and this is where I would love your expertise on, is more so with the reduction of pollutants entering our stormwater system. And the standard for the stormwater system is to reduce pollutants in stormwater to the maximum extent practicable. And so, you know, that's a legal term, but I think that we could be doing a lot more to reduce pollutants to the maximum extent practical. And I think the parks pose a good opportunity for that. So we can hold that thought for 1 second until we get to that agenda item. But yeah, great point. Mr. Glavin?
I'll hold that thought till we get to the agenda item, but I don't want, we can't take much time on it. But just...
Anybody else on the report card? Okay, if anybody wants to see it, it's on the websites of both of our organizations. Okay, back to the agenda. Okay, H3, El Portal Parks renovations. So I probably can just introduce this. I know the manager sent around the proposal for all the park renovations, and I know we all have a lot of thoughts on that. Really quickly before we jump into those, Mayor Nickerson, how much money are we spending on this proposed renovation, and where's the money coming from?
So, all right, so there's a couple of things. So we have funding that came from the green space funding that came from the Cavisa development.
Okay.
I have that funding. But I went out and got separate funding for the parks of like about $600,000. That's separate funding that we have, just because that way we have more options. Because you guys, a lot of times, you know, and I know we speak about this all the time about the funding, but this is the thing about the funding that comes in, and all this funding we've been getting, and all this funding we've been getting, and all this funding we've been getting in. All this funding from the federal government, from the state government, especially most of it's from the federal government. From the federal government, when we get this funding in, we have to stick to certain parameters for the funding. Because the funding that we got for specific reasons, right? So, you know, just like you were saying with the technology, that's how the park renovation thing kind of first started to come to be, because I said, okay, you know what, with the technology funding, some technology funding we got, I can put Wi-Fi in all the parks. So we had to check with them, that'll pass. Okay, yeah, that'll pass. I said, okay, well dang, you know, Christine, like we can put Wi-Fi in all the parks. What else can we do with the parks? Let's try to find different funding for this. So it's kind of like almost piecemeal. So that's why I sent that out, what Christia sent out. And that's why I want to hear back everything that you guys have to say, like what Adam wrote, and, you know, and Colin wrote something I'm going to respond to during this meeting and things like that. Give me all your ideas. Hugh wrote something a little bit earlier, and everything you guys have to say, so that what me and Christia are going to do, we're going to compile all those ideas, and then we're going to get to go back and look through all the funding with the engineers to see what is acceptable with the funding. All right, so it's not like, so it's kind of like, you know, it's always good to get funding because we don't have to use taxpayer dollars. But if we were a major city that had money that we could use, like taxpayer dollars that we could use, then our wish list is to the sky, because then we can do everything that we wanted to do because we don't have to follow any parameters. But so just give me, you guys just say what's on your mind. I was going to kind of keep that toward the end at first, but I want you guys to say whatever's on your mind. You know, sky's the limit. And then let me and Christia worry about the technological part about, you know, what we can do and what we can't do from the, you know, the lines of black and white that's written in the in all those, you know, 200 pages of the documentation for each funding ask that we have to, got, approved for. So that's kind of how that works. So just so if once everything goes through, I just want everybody to keep in mind, you guys, once everything goes through, and when these parks and everything are are upgraded, a year and a half from now, and everything's done and completed, and of course, along the way, I'm gonna be telling you guys all type of stuff, every step along the way. But just in a year and a half or whatever, when everything's done, if it doesn't look like exactly what you want it to look like, it's not because we purposely didn't make it look like that. All right.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Real quick, just procedurally, I want to open it up to the task force before we jump to Mr. Brown and Mr. Gladwin. Does any of the task force members want to comment on this? No? Okay.
I'd like to have more time. I just haven't had time to fully review this. So I look forward to hearing what Colin and Hugh have to say about it. And then I'd like to try to follow up on it after the meeting.
Madam Chair, if I may say one more thing, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Yeah, so and also, as I said, that I want you guys to go into this and just tell me everything you guys want to see in all these parks. Don't hold anything back. Also, remember this: we're always going for more funding in all type of ways for every little thing. I'm talking about you guys. They have funding for, if you want to, improve the amount of plants you have in a certain location, there's funding for that. If you want to improve, there's funding for everything. So if for this first go around for these parks and things like that, if through the funding and the the parameters, if they're strict to the point to where we can't get everything we want, we always go for funding. Like, we're never resting. Even when we get, that's the reason why we have funding, multiple funds for the same project. We have multiple funds for the same project, because we might have one fund to where it's like, oh, in this fund, we only want you to plant oak trees. But then for the same project, we go for like 2 other funds, where in one of the other funds, it's like, okay, for this fund, as long as you have trees that are over 6 feet, you guys can plant any trees you want. So now, we can like piecemeal from one fund to another. So just because these parks, they don't get done exactly the way we want them to get done, we're still going for more funding. It might not get done the first way we want to get done, but 4 months later, we might be changing things out because I just got funding for another thing, for things that are more, comparable to what exactly you guys are asking for. Just kind of keep that in mind as we go forward. Don't be discouraged if for the first time we don't get exactly 100% of what we're looking for.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a feeling that Mr. Gladwin and Mr. Brown have the same thoughts that I have. So I'll let you guys mostly jump in. The big picture thoughts I had was native plants. And then I wrote for river estates and Sherwood Forest, wetlands, ? Stormwater pollution cleaning, ? AAA plan, ? And then I wrote Colin Brown. So I will open the floor up to you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's, for me, I wanted to get I don't know if any of you had the time to read my response, which is much less targeted and more conversational. And I think that I wanted to get through this meeting. I wanted to hear what Mayor had to say and other people had to say, because there's so much that can be.
Sorry, Mr. Brown, I don't think that the task force, or I did not get your response.
I'm gonna forward it. Yeah, the task force was not on your response, Mr. Brown, but I got you right now. I'm gonna take care of it right while you guys are speaking right now. I got you.
All right, thank you. No, I think it's important to hear what the mayor has to say and other people have to say, because everybody can say a lot. So I wanted to see the field and to see to hear about the stormwater compliance and thoughts on that prior to responding. But Elizabeth, what you're talking about, the correlation that runs between stormwater management, cleaning stormwater, native plant communities, ecological restoration. Right, these are all things. This is a very linear approach to funding. It's a very linear approach to the conversation that makes sense. But you know, on top of it, like El Portal it's a bird sanctuary. It has an environmental agenda. So it's part of our identity to approach these park renovation projects in a way that we're looking at, you know, what types of plants correlate to what types of animals. What are we trying to recreate here from an ecological standpoint? How does that support the environmental of the village? How does this make this a better place to live? How does this make a unique place in Miami? You know, that's a whole conversation that I'm looking forward to diving into with multiple of you. I've been talking about it. I've talked about it several times with you. I met with Kristen at Sherwoods where we discussed stormwater at one point. But there's a whole nother aspect to the park renovations, and that's the historical precedent that we have here. And it's not only the Tequesta Native Americans and the Native American village, but it's also, you know, the Coontie Mill and the Arbor Woods site. And, you know, how do we begin to uncover and pay homage to our history through the renovation of these parks? And how does that go hand in hand with ecological restoration and stormwater management? So it's a big net, and El Portal has the history to, we can do this. And you know, those are my thoughts. Much less technical at this point, but more that I as I look at these plans, that, you know, that conversation, that level of study, that level of reveal, we're not approaching it with that lens. And to the mayor's point that this is a process, and that, you know, we're moving in a direction and we're going to get more funding, and you know, to not be discouraged in any way, shape, or form by the progress in which we are experiencing. You know, trying to understand that that framework and where we're operating as a village is something that I'm very curious to develop the conversation there as well. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Gladwin?
Yeah, I have two quick points that are probably more technical. The first is there was a good interchange of emails between me and Adam and the mayor about this. But the problem is when I respond to something like this, you know, I don't copy the task force because of the sunshine rules. So I just wanted to be sure that exchange of letters also.
They have it now, Mr. Gladwin. They have it now in the email that I just forwarded from Colin. In that email chain down, you see it first starts off, you go all the way down to the beginning of that email chain. It starts off with Adam's email, then goes to yours, and then the conversation.
And just to clarify, you all, Mr. Brown and Mr. Gladwin, can always talk to us. We cannot reply
individually, but I can't send you. I can't send any to more than one of you.
You can send us an email to all of us. We can't respond because each other is copied on it. We could respond directly to you. Okay,
is that correct, Mayor?
Yeah, that's correct. I know what you're saying, Mr. Gladwin. Sometimes, Madam Chair, just to be safe, because of his quote unquote consultant place, it might be easier for him to just conversate with you guys one-on-one. You know, right now it's different. You know, I'm the liaison and we're in the middle of the meeting. So right now we're kind of talking about it, which is why I'm kind of sending it to everybody. But I think just to be safe because of his consultant position, and just to kind of keep it streamlined, it might be easier for him to just contact you guys one-on-one.
Yeah. I mean, it'll come up when we talk about the weather stuff, but the only exception on that I did with the prior police chief was there was a certain type of message that I would send with caps, resilience related, and those would go to the task force. But both the police chief and I were extremely careful to make sure that no business of the task force was reflected in them. It was just about hurricane risk and stuff like that. So, but I think otherwise I'm going to follow what you say, Mayor. So. Which means normally what I do is I send it to you and you send it to the task force. And it's just this case, it happened so fast, there wasn't time. And also, the second point I want to make, which is relevant to the task force, was very important. So I wanted to get to that. And to me, what was tremendously exciting and good about this was the fact that the county archaeologist was involved. I know that you and Christia, the manager, have been meeting with them, and that is absolutely crucial to get us into compliance. And the reason for that, particularly for the task force, we've talked about this before, is that the worst flooding problem in the village right now, where it floods 1 foot higher than anywhere else, is the Sherwood Forest Park area, as Chairman Carpenter knows so well. We absolutely have to do something about that. It probably will only take a French drain, but we absolutely cannot do that in the archaeological zone without involving the archaeologists. So that was all really why I really jumped into that discussion. And also, there's the issue that I'm fairly certain that what's causing the problem is the same spring whose output, when the transverse glade was present, we know there was tremendous water output from the outflow of that spring, and that's what drove the Woods County mill. So I think, we can put a French drain there or something that will get the water back down into this underground tunnels through the limestone aquifer. But I really think we need to see if the archaeologist, or particularly Bob Carr, can do a really good study of the Woods Mill. Now, as Colin said, it's really important, but this is the time. I mean, it's like the Mexico City subway, the incredible archaeology that was done when that was done. This, to me, is that kind of project that, we're going to have to do. So that's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Mr. Gladwin.
Other than there was a little bit of history there that was exchanged about the ALE and how the mayor was there at all the meetings, but I came in late. I was totally terrified because Kim Flower, who ran it, who's an architect, was so incredibly organized, so I was just commenting on the fact that now here, suddenly I'm dealing with another architect who's incredibly organized. And meanwhile, Kim is running the wonderful Flight Wine Bar at the Shores, which is open. And I really think that our new architects should go and have a round of wine with everybody else, or beer over there, or nice food with the former architect. Anyway, enough.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Mr. Gladwin. So I'll just add my thoughts on top of that. I saw Adam Old's email about the native plants, and I would just like to wholeheartedly second that. I feel like the opportunity to make the village of El Portal almost entirely native in terms of our public parks is a really amazing opportunity. And I would hate to spend all this money and time and effort to redo the parks and have it not be native, especially given the background that Mr. Brown just shared. Like, this is an environmental community. We are Tree City. And the amount of wildlife that would support and ecosystem benefits, I think is hard to, would be hard to best. So I think that I would love to see that feedback go into it. And then to go back a little bit to specifically the River Estates and the Sherwood Forest Park, I was really happy that Mr. Gladwin was going to be on this meeting because I knew he'd bring up the archaeology point. Knowing that we're going to this conversation with this big piece of the archaeological point that needs to come first. Sherwood Forest and River Estates are both in areas of the village that have the lowest elevation, well, not the lowest elevation, the highest flooding issues, or among the worst flooding issues. And I I feel like these parks could be used more effectively to address stormwater retention, maybe wet retention systems for both flood control and for pollution retention and reduction, because they're both also in very close vicinity to the Little River. So I would love to see a proposal, and that's why I was hoping maybe Mr. Brown had some suggestions about using these to retain and clean stormwater as well. I know that's a bigger redesign than what is proposed, but I do think that would be a really valuable use of those properties.
I think that this was, Mayor, do you mind?
Oh, go ahead. Of course, Mr. Brown. Oh, you.
No, I mean, this has been at the forefront of my mind for since I moved to El Portal, and it was something that I don't know if you remember the last meeting that I gave a quick presentation of, transitioning a parking lot into essentially a secondary dune and hind dune wetland condition, and how you can create a park out of that, and the ecological precedent, and it's a data-driven design. So, I mean, in short, all parks should be need to be serving as green infrastructure. So that means that your park is cleaning your stormwater. Your park is actively creating ecological habitat. Your park is actively cleaning the watershed. So every time every time it's raining, you should smile because you see all the water coming off the roadway. It's not running into the storm drains. It's actually running into planting beds. You go out there in the midday next day and all the plants are blooming. There's butterflies everywhere. It's that level of thinking and that lens that we need to be approaching these designs with. So how to move this forward and how to help direct this is something that I'll be looking for guidance from the mayor and councilperson Carpenter and others. But it is a fairly simple. When you think about it, it is an overly simple concept in which you just create lower bioswales to collect stormwater before it hits any sort of surface drain condition.
Let me if I could just quickly add, take a look at the Little River Conservancy report on the tropical storm Ada flooding, because in there, in the survey of what happened, there's talk about just something like that as an extension of the Nature Trail Park. There's a perfect area there for a retention wetland that would filter water and stuff like that. So.
Great. I think both of you guys summarized exactly what I thought when I looked at these plans as well. I think the direction that it seems like what I'm hearing as a task force, well, I'm not seeing disagreement as a task force, is that green infrastructure is really where we'd like to see these parks go.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may.
Of course.
No, thank you guys for this. Like I say, we're taking all these all your comments, all your ideas, and don't think that Manager Alou and I that we're like on like the opposite side of where you all are. It's not like we're on the opposite side of where you all are. We have, we want these things to get done. We're just binded by whatever the parameters of whatever distinctive funding is. That's the balance that we have to play on that side, So don't think that we're not going to push for everything you guys are saying. We don't want everything that you guys are saying. And I'm not saying here that what you guys are saying we won't be able to do, because trust me, I'm the one I write all the resolutions and all the ordinances for El Portal. Every resolution we've ever passed since I've been mayor, I've written it. Every ordinance we've ever passed since I've been mayor, I've written it. And so I find ways, like there's certain things, like for example, I'll make up something just kind of out of blue, but these are the kind of how these things go, right? So let's say they'll say, okay, you can get this funding if you use plants that are part of this type of family, this type of plant family. right? And let's say that you guys want, you know, plants that are more native. They're not part of that type of family, but in these plants that you want that are native, they have a cousin that overlaps with one plant in this family. Then I have to try to find that and then fuse my way through that to make this plant that you guys want funded, because, you know, the cousin of this plant falls under the category of the cousin of one of these plants over here that are funded, but that are not native. So those are the things that we have to go around and find ways to try to, like, you know, connect the dots so that we can get the funding for these projects. But trust me, we're gonna. That's why I wanted to get all of you guys. I want to get everything that we got is perfect. You know, all of the comments, the detail of the comments, so that now me and Christina can compile everything, and then we can start to, you know, the engineers start to go through all the paperwork and be like, okay, how can we connect this? How can this one? Oh, is this one? Oh, this one's already good. We can do that. But how can we do this? How can we do the bioswale? How can we do this? How can we do that? So
I just want to ask Mayor Nickerson. So, having not seen any background, or I don't know what the grant funding specifications are for this project in terms of that. Like, are there specifications in the current grants that we've already received that tell us the types of plants we have to use?
Yeah, every funding grant that we have, we've had specifications in it.
That we've specified, or that the grantor has specified?
It was part of the funding when we got. It was part of the funding. So, you know, remember I get grants, but none of it's not just grants. The majority of funding I've gotten is just national funding, just straight up funding.
Okay, I guess it would be helpful to know what the current, if it's possible, and not necessarily right now in the meeting, but maybe we could circulate it. Just, it would be helpful to know what restrictions we're working under. Because we could suggest pie in the sky stuff from now until the cows come home. But if there's already restrictions, it would be good to know them before we start piling on you. I don't think we want to do that.
No, absolutely. But you remember, like I said, you know, we get things from different areas, right? So that's why I wanted to get like the pie in the sky. I want to get everything you guys have, because not only do, you know, I have the park grants funding, I have a technological grant also that I'm tying in with the parks. Maybe through the technological grant, they're only focusing on technological items like the Wi-Fi in the parks. But maybe through that, if there's money left over after the Wi-Fi in the parks, because it's technological, they're not thinking about native plants or things like that, I can sneak native plants in that grant. You see what I'm saying? So there's all type of little things like that me and Christia work with, and we figure out, and we go underneath, and we find a way, and we zigzag in and out. I mean, we're about to put a full bathroom in the tot lot, just like Miami Shores has. Full bathroom. How can we find that? We found that because it was a grant that we found about old seesaws and old park, you know, like equipment. And we snuck bathrooms in, and now we're gonna have a permanent bathroom in the tot lot. So we find little ways. So just give me what you guys want, and then let us take that. And then from there, I think after that, you know, we'll be able to see, and I can come back to you and kind of tell you guys how things are looking, and tell you guys, okay, these are the parameters at that time. But I want your wish list, because I want to try to achieve everything you guys want, you know? All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. So is there a time frame on the use of this grant money, or do we have time to continue this discussion?
We have time to continue. I forgot what the time frame is. So we have the grant money, then we have the development money, and then there's a funding thing there also, and they all have different time frames. So we have time, but there's no reason to wait. You know, the comments you guys gave me, we're gonna jump right on it and start to jump right on it. There's no reason to wait, because the more we wait, and you all know this better than I do, the more we wait, that's more nutrients into the C7. That's more time being wasted. That's more, more problems with our flooding. That's more, like problems with our mitigation and things like that. So there's no reason. I get like let's go. Why wait? So yeah, so we have time. We want to get it right. We want to get it correct and get everything you guys have in. But as long as you guys, as you know, Mr. Brown said, as long as you guys get in to me your wish list, then let's just start to go at it. Let's just start to go at it so we can start to see exactly what we can do on this time around, and let's just get it done.
I also just wanted to flag that the, similar to what Mr. Brown presented with the Miami Beach project, a stormwater system that provides ecological benefits, pollution benefits, flood attenuation, all that kind of stuff, overlaps really, really well with our MS4 permit that we just discussed with the AAA plan. And I think would fit into the county's RAP that they're developing as well. So I think that checks a lot of our, our task force agendas, and if I can use that term.
No, absolutely. I think that's a great point, Madam Chair, that you bring up, because, since the county does have to go into that situation with the RAP, and there's a program, I think that if we come to a point to where, which might happen because it happens a lot, if we come to a point to where the we're like kind of, there's something that we want, and they're like, you know what, you guys are like almost there. We understand where you guys want to go, but you're not right there yet. Like we're not going to give you guys, we're not going to approve that for you. Things like, well, the county's doing this RAP and this falls into that. There's a AAA situation. This falls into that the county has to do. The adaptation action area. And so if we can use those things to kind of maybe push us over the edge for certain things you guys are asking for, they normally wouldn't give it to us. We can argue that we need to do this in preparation for the future because you want to be ahead of the ball instead of behind the ball. So that's why those things are good also, because I can use them as an argument to try to get, approval for things that we might not otherwise get approval for.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, as you're talking about how tiered and how complex this can be, Mayor, and you're talking about just making forward progress, I do just want to make one note, and that is just making sure that's clear that, the importance of having Robert Carr involved and him getting ahead of this and pointing out, culturally sensitive areas for people, who no longer have a voice and who lived on this land. I think that is such an important part right now. And I think the biggest thing that I would like to avoid, beyond any sort of non-native plantings or planting invasives that aren't friendly to the native ecology, is undoing something of cultural relevance that could have deep meaning for everybody who lives in El Portal and could honor people. So,
Colin, could I say something quickly about
Yes.
my conversation with you? I just wanted to point out to you guys that, I think that Eugene Donaldson, who had that house, was, at the time he died, he was going to be kind of the link to Bob Carr, and now the link is there. You'll see it in the correspondence because, the archaeologist working at Pelican Harbor site is in Bob Carr's company. But I think it's important to tell people too that I was quite involved in the sale of that house, and the family very expressly wanted to sell it to a person who would continue the archaeological and environmental things that Eugene pursued. So Colin just didn't buy that house because it was a bargain. He was picked by their family, so I feel like in the connection with Bob Carr, I think it's important that Colin be able to initiate that contact also by himself, if that makes sense. I just wanted to, I know we said that, and I just want to make sure you still agree, Colin, or so.
Yeah, I know. I'm absolutely willing to pursue it and to help move this forward, but I also, Mayor, want to be respectful of the
Yes, of
various
course.
agendas that you have to manage throughout this as well. So
I also think it's important that the village asks for it. I mean, we're gonna cover this a little bit more in the next agenda item. But, you know, just to summarize everything that we've been talking about, it seems to me that, you know, we're gonna have one opportunity right now to try to make sure, since this is like happening, this park renovation, to kind of, you know, try to do the best that we can to try to move it forward in as proactively as possible. So, you know, the archaeological questions I think are really significant, especially since we have a designated zone there. And then the natives, within the constraints of whatever you guys are trying to balance in the village, like now is the time for us to try to, like, you know, get as much as we can and optimize this opportunity as much as possible to move it forward. So, and I think the archaeological piece of that is really important if we're talking about working on the mound in Sherwood Forest, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You guys, you know, like I said, just continue to, like, you know, just give me, like, as you guys have been doing, everything you guys want, and you know, I'm gonna make it come true, as much as possible. We've been working, Christine and I have been working with, you know, as Mr. Gladwin said, the county archaeologists, we've been working with them. We did have to go get the sign off. If anybody follows El Portal on Instagram, you guys might have seen in the past like couple of weeks that I went and had a full meeting. I invited all 12 Native American organizations, and I had a full meeting with them a couple of weeks ago. And so we did that. We actually had to get the sign off on even doing anything with the Native American mound. We already got the sign off from the National Native American Heritage Foundation. So we had to get that, and we got that already. You know, so we're going through the right, you know, programs and processes. Trust me, look, this is not about, and you know, as mayor, I do have to balance that, you know, our parks, they still have to be family friendly, right? You know, I'm still the mayor of all the families in El Portal. You know, they have to be family friendly and things like that. They have to be places where, you know, families are, you know, are they're inviting the families and things like that, and kids and children and things like that. But understand that, you know, we're not just doing the parks just because we're just taking our time to try to do these parks to just try to do something and try to just make something look like Disney World. You know what I mean? The reason why, you know, we're bringing this to you guys, and the reason why I forwarded you that, you know, the plans, was because we want to do it the right way. Right? We're not just doing it just to do it, just so I can say like, okay, another infrastructure project that we got funding for that's completed. You know, we're trying to do it the right way, as close to the perfect way as possible, according to the funding that I have to follow. All right, I'm here for you. We'll make it happen, you guys. We'll make it happen.
Thank you, Mayor. Anything else before we move on to the next agenda item? Just being conscious of time. Okay, great. So El Portal Sustainability and Resiliency, Charette.
Madam Chair, this is Vice Chair McLean, I know, and Mr. Brown, and I think Mr. Gladman is also.
Just them.
Madam Chair, Vice Chair McLean.
So this is kind of interlocking with the parks conversation. So I think it should be, I don't know, it's kind of, if we were doing a Venn diagram, there'd be a very heavy overlap between what we just discussed and what I'm about to raise right now. So bear with me. But, you know, there's a larger conversation going on amongst the different local constituencies around the river. And these conversations have included what we talk about here, the Little River Conservancy, Pelican Harbor, Cavista, anybody who comes to develop the little farm, to some degree, Averjane and her development on the other side of the S27 of the S27 structure, and the adaptation action plan right? Now, what you just raised, Elizabeth, earlier in the meeting about, what the county has to do to,
Wrap.
right, exactly. So this is all going on, plus the, all the other stuff that the village is trying to manage around septic to sewer. Anyway, one of the things that I want to propose as a possible next project for the for this committee to take on, our next sprint, if you're in agile language, is I would really like to see us take the opportunity right now with all the resources that we have in front of us and all the things that seem to be moving in the right direction to consider developing. And I don't know if it's a shred, because I always think of shred as being a public process, but I was thinking that we could leverage Colin and the work that's being done in all these different entities and try to create a vision document, a master plan, a charrette, whatever we want to call it, but a formal document that pulls together a lot of these different pieces into a single place under the guidance of this committee on behalf of the village. So it's an official document where we could set forth the vision for what we would like to see on this end of the river. And some of those things we have direct control over. So the parks, the seawall, right? Our own work that we're doing where we actually have 100% control over it pending funding. And then things that we're adjacent to, but that we can sync up with. So that would include what Hugh and Catkin and Colin are talking about on Hugh's property, the Little River Conservancy, somewhat involved with that. It can include and reflect what Pelican Harbor is doing in their space on the other side of the river. It can reflect what Cavista is talking about doing on their new waterfront property, because we have met with, not in official capacity, but in a community capacity with Cavista to talk about what they're thinking about. And also for us to be able to leverage the municipal levers that we have over the potential little farm property. So in terms of saying more explicitly, we would really like to see the south end of that property become X, something that we could put down in front of a developer who's coming, because I think that that property may be sold soon. So anyway, so I just wanted to bring it forward to the committee, this idea that we could, we all know that these threads are out there. Some of them are reflected in our minutes. Some of them are reflected in the Little Rivers efforts. Some of them are reflected in what Colin has been working on. I would really like to see the village take the opportunity right now to put a flag in the ground, create a master planning document that both reflects, again, what we have control over and what we would like to see beyond that, so that we have a really concrete, well thought out plan that can become a guiding document for what we want to see moving forward. I don't know if other people have more they want to add into that idea, but it just seemed to me like the perfect opportunity for us as a committee to have a very, very high impact, and also to kind of create the structure that will help us get to where we want to go when people come knocking, like developers at the little farm. So that's it. That's my pitch to the committee.
Chair, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I think this is a great idea. You guys know, whatever you guys pass through the task force, I'll get it through the council. I'll make sure it happens. I think that what we should do, and the way we should just kind of structurally do this and get this started, I think that you all should, kind of like how we were doing with the park situation, I think that you guys think about the charrette or master plan as a whole. I think you guys should start to, on your own, jot down detailed information that you want to see as part of this master plan, as part of this charrette. I want to see this, I want to see this, and that. We come together with all those ideas. Any ideas that are conflicting, we debate it, we narrow it down, we vote on those different ideas. We come to our set of ideas that we want to have, that we want to see as a task force. At that time, we bring in Christia, we'll bring in Placerbia, we'll bring in all those, that because we're already in agreement with everything we want. Then they can help us formulate all of that. All right. And then once it's formulated, then we get the final version of what we want. We vote on it, it's good. Then I'll take it to council, we'll get it passed, and then it'll be our institutionalized, it'll be set in stone. Madam Chair.
I think that sounds fantastic. I'm fully on board with that. So is Maribel.
So I think if we start to do that, we can, come back next meeting. Since we're only meeting like once a month, it gives people enough time to kind of get their ideas down. We can.
It feels like this might be something that takes.
No, it's going to take a long time. But what I'm trying to say is we can come back next meeting and kind of like, for as long as it takes, we can kind of like kind of update. We can do like a quick little like just kind of like a little like we could discuss it really quickly at a meeting if you want to. We can do that if you want to, or we can just drop it if you want to and then bring it up 4 meetings from now if that's what you want to do. But I just think that because of the ideas, I think that it just may be something that we at least I can at least remind you guys to I'm going to put it on our list, right, of continuous like projects. But I just think it's something that we don't want it to fall to the wayside. Because I think this is the perfect time, as Vice Chair McLean is saying, Madam Chair, as you're saying, I think, Mr. Gladwin, Member Fruitstone, Member Webb, Mr. Brown, I think we all kind of feel, with the park situation happening, with, El Portal getting unprecedented amount of funding that it's ever had in its entire history. This year, 2022 is El Portal's 85 years since 1937. It's 2022. So it's kind of like everything's coming together at the same time. We're kind of breaking records right and left. So I think that we just need to jump on these things and just kind of keep this momentum like, running instead of like kind of letting it fall to the wayside, Madam Chair, but it's completely up to you guys the way you guys want to do it.
I'll defer to Kristen, but I agree. I was going to say we should have like a special meeting where that's the only thing on the agenda, because I think that'll be a full and long conversation.
Yeah, and I would like to push push is perhaps a bit of a strong word, but I would like to actually make this be something real, not something that we track on the side. So I would like to put it center plate. And I think what form it finally takes and what is in it, what we want to see included in it, are part of what needs to be discussed in the first phase or thought about in the first phase. And I also think it should be a bit of a living document. So we should develop something and then revisit it. But I think that the primary goal would be to try to secure and advance the village's agenda and vision for what it wants on this end of the river, and which happens to align with the agenda and visions of pretty much everyone else who's around us that I mentioned earlier. So I just think that we can have a leadership position. I mean, there are a lot of entities involved that touch the river in this area, but we are one of the only municipalities that really owns a good chunk of the river from 95 to the bay, that's under this type of governance structure. Like, we can have a really huge impact. And I think that we should take that opportunity, especially it being an anniversary year. It's a cool idea.
I think that's a good idea to maybe, I don't know if we'd have a kind of separate meeting or what kind of format we would start to gather our ideas. Maybe initially we just kind of, I don't know if we can have a shared document. We can just kind of quickly jot stuff down. I think we have to collect them and send them to Omar, and Omar becomes our shared document. Like, I think, or whoever, like, or one of the consultants
during the meeting.
Yeah. But somebody has to gather them, like we can send them and then somebody has to kind of organize them and create a document for review, right?
Okay, so we just send you our initial ideas, Matt, you're okay with that? Okay,
yeah, I think we need to have a special meeting where this is, not a regular agenda, but this is the agenda.
Yeah.
So, Madam Chair, if I may. So I think what we need to do, or what you all need to do, you all need to figure out how long you think that you want to gather at least your initial ideas of what you want to see in this master plan charrette. If you think it's going to take you, 4 weeks, we can have a meeting in a month. If you think it's going to take you guys 8 weeks, we can have that meeting in 2 months. So how long do you guys think that it's going to take you to gather those initial thoughts and ideas? You send them to me, I put them in a document. That'll be our supporting document for that meeting. I'll email it out. When I email out the agenda, the supporting document, everybody will have that time to be able to see. We'll do it. I'll make sure I do it, a week before the meeting. Everybody will have, because it'll be a special meeting. Everybody will have, that week to look at what everybody else said. That way, because it'll be at the meeting will be advertised already. The agenda will be advertised already. So the supporting document will be advertised already. We come to that meeting, everybody sees what everybody already has in mind. If there's any conflicting ideas, we can debate it at that meeting. And then we kind of leave there with our preliminary set of details that we want in that charrette master plan. If we can get, in the perfect world, if we can get through that meeting and have the exact details that we want, perfectly fine. But if we, come out of that meeting and we need one more meeting to just kind of like shore everything up, then that'll be up to you guys. But right now, you guys need to decide how long do you want to get those ideas together before that meeting.
Kristen, do you have any time thoughts?
What is the timeline on the parks projects?
Could I jump in?
Mr.
You
Cloud?
guys have time.
Yeah. The thing is, I'm already working on this project because I'm Mr. Brown's data guy, and we've been working on, how to get a framework that's with mapping and GIS and everything that will be adequate for this design. And there's been a lot of really hard work because I have to go from my data stuff in GIS to Colin's AutoCAD and wrap my head around it. So I think we're solving those problems, but we're going to have to do aerial imagery. I haven't even talked to Colin, but we're going to need to utilize drone shots and map from then.
Mr. Godwin, sorry, you're talking about your property right now?
No, I'm talking about something that we started for my property.
Okay.
But because of this project, we now have to do for the entire riverfront, I think, or a critical area of the village that's most important.
For the charrette?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
The data structure. So I would say there are questions about how feasible some of it is, exactly how Colin's going to work it out with the data. I mean, he and Kristen are totally in charge of it, but, I have to make the data work. And I think we're going to need 2 months, I would say.
Sorry, Mr. Glavin, I'm a little bit confused because the charrette is like a document of all the things we want to see in the village.
Well, that has to be clarified because I think the way I've talked to Colin, a charrette has a very the normal charrette, the design charrette has a very technical side, which usually involves landscape urban planning with some architecture.
Okay.
For this, there's a corresponding technical side, but that requires a whole different level of data.
Okay, so what Kristen is talking about, I only know what I'm hearing on this meeting, right? So I just want to make sure.
Right.
I think we need to back. I think there's two different things going on. Well, I mean, they're not different. They're going to come together,
Okay.
but I think that but just to clarify for the public record.
Yes.
So I think that ideally, and we will come to consensus on this if it comes to pass, but I think ideally what we want to wind up with at the end is a document that does include some technical, the way that I envision it in my head is that we have the thing, we sort of do the ideation to talk about what we would like ideally included, what ideas would be in there, what would be the geographic scope of what we would want to put down on paper. Like, are we talking about 95 to the Bay? Are we talking about, the footbridge to the S27 or whatever? But if we want to create a document that is practical enough and is specific enough for the village to be able to put it down in front of a developer, we are probably going to need to have some plans eventually that go with this, like whatever we decide to ideate, whatever we decide as the geographic destination, whether we center on the basin, which I actually think we should because of the manatees. Like if that becomes the geographic center of whatever we decide to do and it goes out from there and covers the other, I mean, whatever it turns out to be, there will need to be probably some design and some planning and engineering documentation that backs it up, and that for that we would need the kind of work that he was talking about.
Okay.
But that's,
I mean, if I could jump in, Christian, I think you and Colin and I need to meet. I mean, we need to get a clearer idea about, what this is about. So far I've been just working on the technical stuff with Colin, and, you guys are the lead on it, but I, for one, really need a clearer idea about sort of how it's going to work.
Well, but to the point, like we just brought it in front of this committee. So the committee needs a chance to actually, if we're going to have the committee oversee it, the committee needs, it needs to go through the process of deciding, like you guys are already in front of this because you guys are already talking about this type of design for your property. And we've had preliminary conversations with some of the community partners, but not under the umbrella of this task force.
Right.
So if this task force is going to be the body that's going to oversee it, we have to go through a process to just figure that out.
So it seems like this is, you guys are, Hugh's talking about step 2, but we need to do step 1, which is put down what we want as a task force and vote it in, right? What our vision is for the whole village and surrounding area. And then step 2 is what Mr. Gladden was talking about, where we have the data and the development, the architecture, all that kind of stuff of that plan.
Yeah,
I see it as kind of like a puzzle where the pieces are lying all over the table right now. And there's a piece that's Hughes property, and there's a piece that's Cavista, and there's a piece that's Little Farm, and there's a piece that's the parks, and there's a piece that's septic to sewer, and there's you know what I mean? Like there are elements, and there's a piece over there that's what Pelican Harbor's planning on their side, and there's a piece over there which is South Florida Water Management. It's like, so they're all sitting out there, and some of them are going to wind up. We're going to kind of bring them together into. I would like to bring them together into a coherent picture that advances the village's agenda, but what pieces get brought in and how they fit together is part of what I think. So to your point, I don't even think it's step 2. I think there's a couple of steps in front of.
Gotcha. Okay.
But the thing is, let me just say, it's critical for the park, for my property, that thing, because the way that's evolving now with a much more professional approach with Colin and Katkin, it's still going to be a park in El Portal. It's still more and more, it makes sense only if it fits in with this larger plan. That's why right now I'm putting time into the technical stuff, even though I'm not, I just want to make sure that that's ready. But, it's going to be a park in El Portal. I mean, that goes back to our very first conversation and what the mayor said,
So there's public stuff going on, there's private stuff going on, there's public-private stuff going on, right? So it's like, but I think for the purposes of this meeting and for the public record, we need to start with this ideation process, and your stuff is going to be reflected in that. And in terms of the timeline, I would encourage us to move forward as quickly as we can, recognizing the fact that we're heading into vacation and hurricane season right now. So,
Madam Vice Chair and Madam Chair, if I may.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly, you guys. So just focus and concentrate on your initial ideas and bring them to that special meeting. Just focus and concentrate on that, and then we'll take it from there. All right, we'll take it from there. All right, just focus and concentrate on that, and everything else will fall into place. Madam Vice Chair, with the different funding and things like that. So I would say that I was looking over my notes and stuff like that where you guys were speaking. To say a little over a year before we start to really put the physical work in the parks. All right, so so I would say about a year until we have to start to show the people with the funds that, we're actually, with these funds, at one point we have to start spending it and showing that we're spending it. So we're about a year out until we have to start to show that we're starting to move forward and spend the funds that we receive.
Okay, so I think that what we need to schedule this first meeting where all the task force members and anyone in the public who wants to join our meeting can sit down and put our ideas all together on a large list, right? And then it sounds like Mr. Gladwin and Kristen and Mr. Brown have already maybe starting outlining some of the ideas that you all have, and that can fit in once we create a list. Does that seem right? Yeah, Kristen.
Sorry, I'm muted. I would say that, yes, I would say that now, to be clear, we haven't had any conversations on behalf of the village, right? This is all just like community networking across multiple conversations, just to gather information. So now I think what needs to happen is that these community that we have gathered some really interesting information, all signs indicate that everybody is moving in the same direction. And so what we want to do is capture that potential energy into a process that we can then use on behalf of the village and on behalf of the river, right? Just to try to move everybody forward. That's what I think needs to happen.
Gotcha. Understood. Okay, that makes sense. So I think we should dedicate an entire meeting to this discussion, but there are other things, we haven't had a meeting in a long time, and I think we're a little backed up on some stuff, and we're also running out of time for this meeting. So maybe, I know you have the next meeting, Mayor Nickerson, as July 6th. Maybe we can have that meeting and then another meeting like the week after it or 2 weeks after that.
Madam Chair.
We need to have like a regular meeting and then this charrette meeting. And I'm wondering what people's schedules are allow if we had maybe even a week, 3 weeks from now, would that be enough time for people to get their ideas together? And then 2 weeks after that, we could have a regular meeting just to kind of split the baby. You're on mute, Kristen.
Sorry, I've had
Really up to you.
construction and animals behind me the whole entire day. So I'm at the end of my executive functioning right now. I'm gone the 22nd until the 9th.
Okay, so
22nd of June to the 9th of July, across July 4th.
Okay, so you couldn't do July 6th anyways.
That will be challenging for me. I will not be having good connectivity.
Me too.
Maribel can't do it either. Okay, so
I can't either.
Okay, so not on the 6th. Okay, what about
Following week works for me.
The 13th?
Yep. Lucky
And then
13.
what if we did another meeting 2 weeks after that for our regular agenda items?
Yep.
So the 13th and the 27th.
Good for me.
Okay, good. Matthew? You're muted.
13th. What month are we talking about? July? Okay.
Was that 13th of July?
The 13th of July, yeah, because we could have a meeting before, Kristen, you said you're out when, the 22nd of June?
22nd of June to the 9th of July.
It just feels like the 15th is 2 weeks from now is too soon.
Yeah.
Maribel's good with the proposed dates in July.
I can do the 13th. I can't do the 27th.
Okay, so let's definitely schedule one for the 13th. And then maybe there's a lot of other stuff that we've put on the back burner too that I don't want to put off for another 2 months. So is there could we do the 20th?
I can.
Yeah, the 13th and the 20th. So the 13th would be the charrette that Kristen just proposed, and then the 20th would be a regular meeting. And at the 13th, we won't address anything except the charrette. Does that work? Okay, Matthew, does that work for you?
Yep, that works.
Hugh, Mr. Brown, I don't know if you want to join those meetings.
It's
Yes?
good for me.
Okay, does that work, Mayor Nickerson? I'm sorry, I should have started with you. Okay, all right, great. All right, awesome. I know we skipped number 5, and we have 2 minutes left of the meeting, but I absolutely do not want to skip this item, Mr. Gladwin. So it's Mr. Gladwin's weather page, hurricane and storm preparation.
Okay. I just want to very quickly tell you, update you on what the purpose of the weather page is. And then secondly, has arisen a tricky sort of political technical issue that I have to ask the task force to be very careful about with regard to how this page functions. But very quickly, I started the page as a consequence of when the task force started. The Little River Conservancy, did a study of flood vulnerability of the village, and we did a report to the village that resulted in village policy. But at the same time, we kind of realized that that the village is vulnerable to flooding in certain ways, as we found out from the Memorial Day flood and Ada and everything that's separate. So, and then on top of that, there's also the memory of Hurricane Irma, where, the village was caught at a critical moment of transition of government and police department, and, there were major problems. So I'm not going to talk about the current situation. I think we do in the next week. You should track the page, because in the next week, we are going to have, I would say, a fairly good possibility of a major localized flooding problem in the village. And one purpose of the page is that when we get into a situation like that, I monitor all the data from the district for tide gauges. So the idea is that I can come out on that page with about a 2-day warning for people that something like this could happen. So right now, that's not happening. The district is doing a great job of draining the river. But it's also the case that I would say we don't know what this thing's going to do. It's still just a bunch of thunderstorms. It will become almost certainly a tropical cyclone within a day or so. And then at that point, it's a different creature, and the Hurricane Center will go into action and start, tracking it and everything, But the key thing is, once they do that, there's no time left for second guessing. In past hurricanes, we've put up model charts and argue this thing's going to hit wherever it hits in 5 days. So right now, I presume the village is getting out the emergency plan and doing all the things that should have been done during Irma. That's not, and I have to make clear that in Florida, responsibility for these kind of orders and action are with the government and the mayor. Only mayors can call hurricane evacuations or make any of these decisions, supported by the village manager. So, that has to be really clear. The page is there, and I will have as much information as I can about what's going to happen. But, it goes to them. And if it does become a major event and we go to type 1 evacuation, then we're under level 1 incident command. And the entire county is operated through the emergency management center, and El Portal is in the hierarchy of centers, led with the emergency operations centers in the city of Miami. So, I just have to make that really clear that I'm not part of that at all, other than giving information. But, everybody, I keep up the page all the time simply because I like it. And, I've worked with the Hurricane Center and all that stuff forever. But, it's there to be informational. And I would also like to be able to resume the practice I've had for the last 2 years with the prior police chief of being able to put out an email that says resilience related in caps, which will then can go to the task force. The task force can't reply, but I can send it to the task force, and there's an absolute guarantee that it will not contain anything pertaining to current business of the task force. So I'd like to quickly ask the mayor and you guys if I can continue doing that. That's the first thing.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Of course.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. When you used to do the resilience related, it was all about storm tracking. We never vote on storm tracking here.
Yes, absolutely.
That's never a voting item. We're never going to vote, hey, you guys, you want to vote if a storm should be tracked or not? It's just not something that we vote on here. So yeah, resilience related, as long as it's about storm tracking, then yeah, you can continue to send it to the entire task force. Chief Magnuson, it's kind of like when we get different mayors, we get different chiefs, they have different personalities. Chief Magnuson was more of an engaging kind of PR type of individual. He was involved in a lot of different things. Chief Mendez is more of a boots on the ground, old school type of police chief. So he's just a little bit different. So he may not be involved, but absolutely continue to do that, Mr. Glad, when you have the permission.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to thank you for doing that too, Hugh. That has been personally very valuable to me, and I know very valuable to the whole community. So
yeah, well, I would ask you guys over the next 2 or 3 days to look at it closely, just because as soon as it becomes a tropical storm, then that information will be very important to you. And it also has a really good compendium of hurricane preparation, which is also important because right now the time frame is so short that, for example, if you were going to evacuate out of the area and it was to become a major hurricane, which is really possible because the water is so hot, we're already out of time to do that. If you don't have that plan in place, it would be very dangerous to evacuate out of town. So please check it. And now, as far as the sensitive item, I have a long history of working with the Hurricane Center on this stuff. And we got the good news yesterday, I think, that Jamie Rome, who's the head of the Storm Surge Unit, was just appointed the associate director. And I think that's wonderful. But Jamie and I have had a really long sort of touchy relationship in the sense he's the one who got the funding for the social science part of the Hurricane Center's work. And he and I have been on a committee overseeing that for 15 years. And he has really different ideas about that social scientists should never do meteorology. Whereas I'm the kind of social scientist that I think just doing that page helps me understand what lay people who are not like meteorologists, like me, how they're processing the information. But I have to be really careful about making sure that you guys never in the public meeting talk about that page as if I was like having meteorological expertise. And I mean, this goes all the way back to the crazy days right out after Hurricane Sandy when, I was doing rapid response research in New York and New Jersey. And, it was very intense and very involved, Jamie. So that's all I'd ask. Is it's sort of like, for the mayor's purpose, we don't act like we're leftist radicals. And for the Hurricane Center's purpose, we don't pretend that Hugh Gladwin is an expert meteorologist.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Understood. Thanks, Hugh. All right, we've hit H6. We just have unfinished business and general orders. Very quickly before we run to the items, Mary, can I just give you a few agenda items to add for next meeting? I'd love to update you all on BDCR as the El Portal representative. And the report card for our El Portal's compliance issues, I'd love to update everyone on. And then just a quick note to everybody, and this is also for the agenda next time, sorry. The Miami-Dade County has passed a fertilizer ordinance, and we're currently in a zero fertilizing time of year. We cannot fertilize at all until the end of October, just as an FYI, and I'd like to talk more about that at the next meeting as well. Go ahead, Mayor.
No, go ahead, Madam Chair.
Okay, and whether we can, and perhaps we can advertise that on our website. Okay, I sent you the Miami Waterkeeper has like social media posts and things like that. And then, sorry, last thing to put the potential technology stormwater, the SAMS, Stormwater Asset Management System on the agenda for next time as well. Thank you. Sorry, that was a lot.
No, we'll do, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay. And then I'll turn it over to you for open items. I know we're out of time.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I appreciate this. Thank you very much for full moon, for sticking by us and keeping us recorded and alive. Appreciate that, Kyle. And shout out to oh, did she leave? I was gonna say shout out to member Fruit Store. I know she was struggling, you know, feeling really, really bad. So I was gonna say shout out that she stayed as long as she could. Yes, I think she just texted me and said she had to go. Let me say really quickly, Madam Chair, that we did have our hurricane preparation meeting yesterday with the county.
Excellent.
Okay, so just wanted to make sure that that was being done. I know it was being discussed. Besides that, Madam Chair, everything that you said, I actually have the flyers for the fertilizer that we're in a no fertilizer time period of the year. I have those flyers already printed up for every household, and they will be put into those door hangers. And I'll be starting to do that this weekend if I can get out this weekend and start to do that.
Awesome.
So that's already been done. They've already been. I've made all the copies and everything for that. So that's the reason why when you were talking, I was like, I have something to add to that. So that's what that is about.
That's wonderful.
That should be going out, and the compost stuff's going to be going out.
Okay, great.
What else do we have? We have here for our items, the things that we have to focus on. So one of the main thing that we have, Madam Chair, you actually it's on for the next agenda, but you and I are going to take care of a big part of this. Hopefully this week. It's already Wednesday, if not next week. But that is that meeting about the what is it with the NPDES. That's the main thing that we have on our list for the stormwater. That's the main thing we have on our list for outstanding items. We do have things like the Little River Historic Designation that's ongoing. We do have things like the fertilizer ordinance, which you and I just discussed, is ongoing. Education of village residents, this kind of falls into what we're going to be putting out this weekend with the fertilizer ordinance thing. And
the technology, right? The app or text.
The app, yes, and the text communication. The last two things that we have are we wanted to make a big focus on water quality going forward, right? Septic tank, stormwater, general trash, and fertilizer, which we're going to talk about next meeting, and the fertilizer thing is going out. And we also spoke about ongoing a compact agreement, how El Portal can work with other municipalities to improve their water quality. That's something that's more on my shoulders. As far as reaching out to other municipalities. And the last thing we have is energy efficiency, which is something that we just need to look into going forward when we're discussing, you know, buildings. And we were discussing, that was kind of we came to a point where we started talking about government buildings with energy efficiency, and if we want and finding a way to try to promote more energy efficiency, not only in our government buildings, which we only have like one, we'll be having more as hopefully as time goes forward, not only in that, but also to the residents. But where we ended our discussion with that, if I remember correctly, Madam Chair, was we were talking about with the residents, how can we promote energy efficiency without, and finding that fine line without penalizing individuals who may not be able to be more energy efficient as quickly as we would like them to be. So that's kind of where we left off. That's pretty
Perfect.
much it.
Thank you so much. Looks like we have our work cut out for us for the next meeting. But the next meeting, we're doing the charrette. The week after that, we'll be doing our general meeting, correct?
The charrette for full moon, Kyle, I know you're listening. I will also email this to you, but for our next meeting will be July 13th, correct? 2022. That's correct, right? That's a charrette meeting. The master plan charrette meeting is July 13th, correct, Madam Chair?
I'm sorry, say that again.
July 13th is the charrette meeting. July
Yes.
13th, 2022, 4 o'clock to 5:30, Kyle, full moon. That's the charrette meeting. That's a special, we'll call it a special sustainability and resiliency task force meeting, Kyle. That's what it's going to be called, the special sustainability and resiliency task force board meeting, charrette master plan meeting, July 13th, 2022, 4 o'clock to 5:30. And then we'll have a regular Sustainability and Resiliency Task Force Board meeting on July 20th, 2022, 4 o'clock to 5:30.
Perfect.
So full moon gets all that prepared for us. So we appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other unfinished business from the task force? No, any new business from the task force? Okay, good and welfare. All right, anything else from anyone? No, okay, can I get a?
Wait, I do, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Are we short a member right now? Is Sandra still with us? What's going on? Do we know?
Officially, she's still with us. There might be something that we might want to address. I'll speak to her offline, and then maybe it's something that we want to address at a meeting.
I just wanted to think about it if we have to put it on the agenda for next time.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
No, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up.
Mhm.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
Welcome back, Elizabeth.
Thank you. It's very nice to be home. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
All right, Matthew, you have to second it.
Second that motion.
Great. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Hearing none, the meeting is officially adjourned at 5:46 p.m.
Thank you,
all
guys.
so much.
Thank you, Miss Flowers, also for joining
Yes,
us and
thank
being
you
with
so
us the
much for
entire
joining.
time.
Yes, thank you,
Miss
Kakin.
Flowers. Thank you, guys. You guys take
Absolute
care.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great to see
Thanks, Kyle,
everyone.
full moon. Thank you, guys. Thanks to everybody. You guys take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.